Welcome, my dears. I'm Lady McCreepster. On April 23rd, I will be celebrating 1 year in the realm of YouTube. As such, if you become part of my dark family on Patreon before then, I will be sending you something very special. If you follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Lady McCreepster, you will already know what I'll be sending you. Exclusive Lady McCreepster vinyl stickers. I'm very excited to give these to you, so remember, regardless of the amount you choose to pledge, if you sign up at patreon.com/Lady McCreepster, I'll send you a vinyl sticker with a sprinkling of dark dust from my realm. A direct link to my Patreon page is in the video description below. Now, on with today's story. This evening's tale comes from Redditor Jaksim. I figured we'd just dive into it, shall we? So come. Lean in closer, and we'll begin. On March 15th, 2018, I received the phone call that changed my life. It was from a man named Chris Bailey. He told me that he was the duly appointed coroner of Gilman, Colorado. He said that he had bad news. I'm calling in regard to a Mr. Brian Hope. My brother? Yes, sir. Are you sitting down? Yes, We found your brother in his motel room this morning. I regret to inform you that your brother passed away last night. We are still investigating, but the cause of death appears to be natural. Natural? Yes, sir. We have reason to believe he had a heart attack in his sleep. I'm so sorry for your loss. That's what he said. So sorry for your loss. As if sorry made up for it. As if I could forgive him. As if I could forgive the world. Well, I couldn't. I wouldn't. And I still won't. My brother was everything to me. He was my protector, my mentor, my friend. He was just 2 years older than me, but it always seemed like more than that. Brian was an old soul. We grew up in Gilman, Colorado. It was the kind of town that was just small enough for you to recognize everybody else's face, but not small enough for you to know their name. For two precocious young boys, it was a comfortable, if somewhat plain, place to grow up. Our world was one of summer days spent playing in the woods and year-long suburban hijinks. When I think back to childhood, I remember the good times with my brother. Once, Brian and I were riding razor scooters down the hill at the bottom of our street, and we crashed into each other. Brian had a nasty cut on his forehead, but he still spent the next week pampering me and helping me tend to my road rash. All he cared about was whether I was okay. He was almost like a second father to me. Our actual father disappeared when we were young, under mysterious circumstances. It was very sudden, and it threw our family for a loop. Our mom did her best, but she was never cut out for being a single mother. When I was 10, we left Gilman. After that, we moved across the country a bunch. My mom was always looking for work, mostly because she got fired from every job she had. She was a little slow and enjoyed her evening martinis a little too much. She used to joke that she shouldn't have taken my father's name, Hope, because ever since she did, it was the only hope she had left. That joke was pretty funny until I was 13. Around that time, she drank herself stupid and wandered onto a highway in the middle of the night. They say the guy that hit her was high on some manufactured drug, but I don't blame him too much. It was partially her fault for getting plastered and wandering away like that. Still, it was rough after she was gone. Rest in peace, Mom. Hope you're happier now, wherever you are. Shortly after Dr. Bailey called, I received an email containing a copy of Brian's autopsy report. It confirmed what Dr. Bailey suspected. Brian's heart gave out. One too many cheeseburgers, I guess. Brian had certainly put on the pounds in his later years. Work had gotten pretty stressful for him. For both of us, really. Brian is, or was, an editor of a local rag, a paper called the Humboldt Gazette. It's no Times, just a mid-sized operation, but he practically carried it on his back. That's why he had gone back to Gilman. He wanted to take a break from the hustle and bustle of the city. He wanted to relax for a while and enjoy the country life. He told me that he had fond memories of the time we spent there as kids. He also told me that Gilman was a funny place, the kind of place that always sticks in the back of your head. I've always wanted to go back, see the house we lived in when Dad was still around, see if anybody remembers him. That's what Brian said before he booked his plane ticket to fly out there. He didn't say what I knew he meant. He wanted to go back and see if he could find out what had happened to Dad. Brian had always said he was curious about it. He always said that it didn't make sense that he would just up and leave us like that. Mom hadn't started drinking until after he disappeared. As far as we knew, they had a happy marriage. Mom never made us think differently. It's always bothered me, Roger. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe I could find him. Make him explain why he abandoned us like that. Brian was the most determined man I ever met. After Mom died, Brian took care of me. He dropped out of school so he could work 2 jobs. I tried to drop out too, but he wouldn't let me. He said I had to make grades so I could get into a good college. So I worked my ass off. I got the grades. I got a good scholarship. Brian was proud as shit of me. The day I got my acceptance letter to NYU, he was so happy. That afternoon, he bought me my first beer and we watched baseball on TV. The Rockies lost, but I'll remember that beer forever. That first beer led me to try a second, and that second led me to a third. And before I knew it, it was finals time for my first semester of college, and I was spending every night chugging cheap beer or cheaper whiskey. Brian wrote me letters, telling me that he was so proud of me, telling me that I was going to make the world a better place. Stupid Brian. He didn't even know his brother was a hopeless alcoholic failure. I was too much of a fuck-up to pass a single class. I didn't even go to most of my finals. College wasn't right for me. I dropped out after that semester. Brian was mad at first, but I think he realized I just wasn't ready for the real world. We both got jobs. He spent his days at a construction site, and I spent my nights as a mall security guard. Neither job was particularly fulfilling. Brian was so exhausted that most nights he passed out in front of the TV as soon as he got home from work. My job wasn't a lot better. Late night security consists mainly of trying not to fall asleep and watching the clock hands traverse their usual path. I spent a lot of those nights writing bad poetry and, worse, short stories. We lived in a crappy apartment, drank crappier beer, and watched even crappier baseball. Over time, Brian got his shit together. He got his GED. He got a degree from community college. Then he got a bachelor's from Northwestern in journalism. Brian was a smart son of a gun. He got a big job doing investigative reporting for the Times. I stayed in our small apartment, working shit jobs and drinking. Sooner or later, we got old. Brian started his own paper with a buddy. They hired me on as a lifestyle journalist. Even if I couldn't make it through a year at NYU, I could still pen a few words about local animal shelters and massage parlors. And after a few years, Brian got tired. You could see it in the bags under his eyes. He had been working so hard for so long. Everybody told him to relax, to take some time off. Brian listened. He took that trip to Gilman. And then I got the call from Dr. Bailey. Just like that. The man who had given me so much was taken away from me. Dr. Bailey said he could arrange for the body to be sent to us in a freezer truck, so I could arrange for a proper funeral. Brian's business partner and I made all of the arrangements. Planning a funeral isn't as hard as it used to be. Nowadays, you tell them your price range. They try to make you spend more, you say no thank you, and then you're on your way. I'd be lying if I told you that I was okay. My stomach still feels like it's full of 100 twisting worms. It's hard to eat or sleep. I always thought that Brian would be there forever. Suddenly, he isn't there to talk to when I'm bored. There is no one to call when I want to complain about the fucking Rockies or my newest column. I'm alone. Sure, I have friends, but nobody like Brian. His body arrived 3 days after the coroner called. I saw it myself. We put it in the ground a few days later. Almost 100 people RSVP'd to the funeral. The man was beloved by all. I'm sure it was a great service. I didn't go because Brian wasn't dead. The night before the funeral, I was working late in the office, both because I had to make up for all the work Brian wasn't doing anymore, and because if I was working, then I didn't have to go home and face the lonely feeling in my head. Anyway, I was going through the submissions we get from readers. Usually it's just spam and fan letters from creepy people that had become obsessed with one of our reporters. But this time, I found something unusual. A small, white envelope. On the outside of the envelope was black Sharpie that read, "Roger, the coroner is wrong." I tore it open in an instant. A little strip of paper fell out. There were 2 sets of characters written on it in a messy script. The first was a web address. The second was a short message. Brian Hope, Gray, 3:15:18. I pulled up the address on my computer immediately. It brought me to a plain black webpage with a video player and a preloaded clip. As soon as the website loaded, the video began to play. The footage is approximately 3 minutes long. It was horrible. I'm going to describe it, but be warned, it is not for the faint of heart. The video is shot in a small grey room. I wish I could provide more description than that, but I can't. There are no fixtures on the walls. There's something off about the room, though. It's almost like the floors and walls are moving. They look almost like they're made of TV static. Although the room appeared dimly lit, I didn't see any light fixtures. There isn't even a door as far as I could see. There is, however, a table in the middle of the room. The table is covered by a dishwater-colored sheet. Lying on top of that sheet is my brother. He's wearing only a pair of discolored boxer shorts. There are shackles on his wrists and ankles that lead underneath the table out of view. He's alive. When the video starts, he's screaming. The camera moves towards his chest, and you can see that his pale skin is stained with sticky crimson blood. The video pans over to the source of the blood. It appears the nipple of the left side of his chest has been ripped off. A little bit of it is still hanging from the areola. Brian keeps screaming, "No more, please stop!" The shot cuts out for a second, then cuts to a figure standing in front of the table. It's standing near his legs and appears to be surveying him. Brian's still screaming. The figure is near silhouetted by the strange lighting in the room. It's hard to make out any of its features. It just looks like a grey mass in a loose humanoid shape. As the camera pans past the figure, you can see Brian's hands. They too are bloody, a result of having had most of his fingernails ripped out. There is a loud buzzing noise in the background, like the sound of white noise. The figure holds up an object. Unlike the body of the figure itself, the object is easy to see in the light. It's a hammer. Its tip is covered in dried blood. Brian screams as the figure raises the hammer above its head. The shot cuts out before the hammer collides with Brian's kneecap. The screen stays black for a few seconds, and then it cuts to a shot of the wall. This is the shot that made me think it was like static electricity. As the camera pans to the right, it feels like I'm looking at dead air, but then the camera comes to a framed picture. It's not so much hanging from the wall as it is floating in front of it. The framed picture is familiar, although I haven't seen it for almost 15 years. It's a photo of my family. My mom, my dad, Brian and me. All from when I was only 2 years old. We used to hang this picture above the fireplace, except the photo had been altered. Someone had scribbled over Brian and my father's faces with black marker. After a moment of focusing on this photograph, Brian is heard screaming in the background. He yells, "Please, somebody help, please!" Then, for just a moment, the video cuts to a face. It is entirely grey and expressionless. In that moment, the buzzing noise was deafening. Then the video shuts off. As soon as it ended, the website crashed. The link no longer displays the video. Now, it just goes to an unowned domain. None of this makes sense. The autopsy report didn't mention any of the injuries depicted in the video. Hell, I saw the body. It wasn't mangled at all. But the person in the video was Brian. I recognized the scar on his forehead from where he fell off his scooter way back when. The date listed on the envelope is from the day Dr. Bailey called me. The body Dr. Bailey sent me isn't my brother. When the coroner called, Brian was still alive. Maybe he still is. Last night, I dreamt about the face I saw in the video. I dreamt that I was running through the woods I used to play in as a child. I was being chased. When I looked over my shoulder, I saw that face. It was faster than me. It caught me. When its grey hands touched my skin, it felt like my blood was boiling. When I woke up, there was a buzzing in my ears. It sounded just like the noise in the video. Whatever that face is, it was telling me something. I know it was. It was sending me a message with that video. It's telling me that it's time to go back to Gilman. It's time to go home. What do you think? A man unable to come to grips with his brother's death, or is there something sinister happening in Gilman, Colorado? Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. If you've just found me, welcome. Remember to hit that subscribe button and that bell icon to be notified of more tales from the darkest corners of the internet. Till next time, my dears, sweet dreams.